Hi, my name's Alice. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the northern Midwest, in a middle-class family on the south side, went to public schools, and grew up in the United Church of Christ. My experience being brought up in the church was feeling a tight-knit sense of sort of community and extended family. It was a very safe and happy place. And then sort of around the age of 16, had some friends come into my life who were out, and met some people through my church also who were out. And I remember, so the AIDS crisis was going on at this point, and part of sort of the social justice ministry of the United Church of Christ was ministering to people, who were dying of AIDS. And I remember going to sort of church services and seeing the quilt and seeing what was going on, and understanding there was this thing called homosexuality. There were people who identified as gay, there were people who identified as lesbian, that this was a different way. And I thought, oh, maybe this explains some of why I've always felt so different. I don't think my sexuality has ever really changed, but the vocabulary that I now have to describe it or name it has changed. And so, I was born in 1976, came out in 1992, kind of in a wider, scale to sort of friends and family and so forth. Entered university in 1993, and my understanding was that you had to choose a side. So you could be gay or you could be lesbian. And there were a couple people I knew who identified as bisexuals, but sort of the overwhelming message I got was that that wasn't a very positive identity, and there wasn't much community there. That you really sort of had to pick a side and be with it. And I thought, well, okay, if I need to choose, I would absolutely choose. I'd only had experiences with women up until then. I saw no particular reason to branch out to having experiences with men. So I thought, okay, great, I'm a lesbian. That makes sense. That makes sense. This explains this. The problem was, I fell in love with a man. And it didn't really fit into the label that I'd had for myself previously. And I think, in fact, it was a challenge even for my family, who had gotten very used to saying, oh, we've got a lesbian daughter, when we belong here, and this is part of their narrative, and kind of using me as an educational tool. And then, and now our daughter has fallen in love with a man. They've decided to get married. They've decided to start a life together. And the fact is, I fell in love with a human who I am deeply compatible with, and who I'm able to have an incredible, loving, respectful, deep connection with on all sorts of different levels. And he happens to be what we call a man. We need to realize globally that words matter, and that the rhetoric that leaders are using, that elected leaders, that people in positions of power are using, they have an impact. And my great concern right now is there's a trend at using language which contributes to a dehumanization of people. I fundamentally believe that we are not able to cause violence to another person if we really see them as a person, as a whole person with a story and a mother and a father and siblings, and as part of a community. That to do violence to another and for hate crime to occur, we have to see that person as not really a person at all. And so I think that it's really important, again, from sort of a top-down thing, that we're making sure that we're not using dehumanizing language, that we're not using othering language. That we are reincorporating everybody regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, national status, if they're documented, if they're not documented, if they've come over on a boat, if they've come over on a plane, whoever they are. I think there's a lot of separating us into them, and that certain people have rights and other people don't have rights. And in fact, we have universal human rights. We live in a country that has signed up to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and so in principle we should believe that everybody possesses dignity and has intrinsic value regardless of who they are. As a bisexual, I feel really lucky to work at a university that is incredibly inclusive and affirmative. I'm really privileged to work someplace where I can come and I can bring 100% of who I am to the job, which I know from previous experience is not something that everybody is able to experience.